All right, welcome back to the link, everybody. Very, very worthwhile information on the previous segment. Of course, our week-long look at diabetes, its impact on our community, and some of the technologies and techniques that are innovating the treatment of the disease. We're going to move on right now to our own Tomas Manglona, who is not in our vicinity today. He is back in the Marianas doing one of his awesome reports. So Tomas is on site right now. Tomas, exactly where are you in the NMI right now?
Hotel, which is one of the quarantine facilities. And as you know, as we reported yesterday on Friday, new protocols kick into place. So quarantine for fully vaccinated people living with other fully vaccinated people will no longer be required. So.
All right. So you caught the red eye flight basically from Guam to Saipan up there. So on assignment. But you know what? One of the things that you're actually working on is a series, and as I understand it, it's you're titling it 6 feet apart or 6 feet under, right? That's kind of playing on that whole slogan that Governor Ralph Torres had, like when the pandemic first started, about the residents of the NMI and how serious he wanted them to take this. And how are you framing that within the context of your series?
Yes, and so the series launches next Monday. It's 5 parts, and you're right. It's something that many political leaders and community organizers have said. Obviously, throughout this entire pandemic, we've been told to stay 6 feet apart from each other, and obviously, folks saying 6 feet under, being that this virus is, as we've known, proven to be deadly. And so, in this series, we really delve into COVID-19 death and grief. We talk with 5 different people who talk about it from their perspective, whether that's at a funeral home, a morgue, a church, a counselor, or even someone who lost their father early on in the pandemic when, as Chris, as you all know, as the show started at the very beginning, we were told we weren't supposed to be doing certain things when this virus first came out and people started having people in their lives died to this virus almost 2 years ago. And so I think one thing yesterday that came up in one of our last interviews as we're preparing to premiere it next Monday, someone said COVID-19, as we continue to deal with COVID-19, there continues to be the aftermath of anxiety, depression, and grief. And that really sat with me because I guess in some ways similar to COVID-19, in which you can't see it, the grief and the anxiety and the depression that many of us are still going through, and something that we write about every day, we can't become desensitized to the COVID-19 reports, to the Joint Information Center putting out the numbers, right? In many ways, we spoke with the daughter of the 82nd COVID-19 related fatality on Guam, and she explained to us how hard it was not to be by her father's side throughout that entire process. We also spoke with a priest who saw one of the first cremations happen when the guidance at the time was to, quote unquote, cremate the body or treat that death in a different way than a non-COVID death. Mm-hmm. And so lots there to unpack, and we're taking an entire week to unpack that. And we end the series talking about how to deal with the aftermath of this continuing pandemic, the battles that we all have to now prepare for in terms of supporting each other and getting out to the other side, hopefully. So that 6 feet apart, 6 feet under series.
All right, really looking forward to that, Tomas. And even though, like across cultures, the grieving process, has a lot of parallels, but at the same time, has some differences. We've actually got our friend Kate Balthazar-Dodge in the KUM News Zoom room right now. So I'd like to, kind of pose this question to the both of you. Good morning, Kate. Half a day.
Half a day. Good morning. And Tomas, half a day. And Tiro, to everybody there to our brothers and sisters to the north.
So Kate, of course, has this wonderful podcast dealing specifically with grief, and Kate, you have actually emphasized the process that one goes through, and and that even though we all kind of deal with grief in very personal and very unique ways,
Mhm.
There is a general model that each of us follow as emotional people and everything like that. So kind of hearing like how Tomas's the interviews he's done and the reactions he's gotten and the stories that have been shared with him and everything like that. Would you offer maybe any words of wisdom from your own professional training about how people might be dealing with this?
Certainly. And I have to commend Tomas for taking on such a huge task of unpacking and kind of getting to all the moving parts about grief. Grief in general, is really uncomfortable. Even for a community and culture like ours that is very close knit and very family oriented, grief is one of those topics that it just doesn't sit well, to talk about and to discuss, in many circles. So, Tomas, you're doing amazing work there. One of the things that Tomas hit on the head is that, these practices that are new, that have to do with how we grieve in general, which was already kind of like, if you go to my podcast and you listen to episodes 1 and 2, everything that we're doing that the pandemic has mandated us to do is so contrary, right, to the way that we support and love on each other in good times and bad times. And so when you are talking about the loss of a loved one and grieving, and then also not being able to grieve in the cultural, and do the customs and things that, we're able to do to bring each other comfort in a time of sorrow. It kind of amplifies that. And then you're talking about grief over the holidays. And so when we're talking about grief over the holidays are the most wonderful time of the year, but not for everyone. This is not, and we have to be sensitive to that. Episode 3 just dropped and talked about short-term energy relieving behaviors. These are the behaviors that we employ to mask our grief and to self-medicate, to kind of sort of get through these feelings of grief and loss that can also be very, very destructive. What are we talking about? Alcohol, drugs, overeating, overworking, even working out too much, gaming, streaming Netflix, and just on end. So these are the kind of things that I delve into a little bit in episode 3. Episode 4 talks about grief over the holidays, right? And that's part 1. So the part 2 will be episode 5. But in episode 4, it talks about how do we move about in our spaces in something as simple as a greeting card, sending a greeting card to somebody who's grieving, right? We don't think about it. We think we're being absolutely thoughtful, and we are, but there are just some things you might want to consider, in how you message that greeting card or that gift to the person who's grieving, especially if it's a recent loss. So there are all these things. We had huge upticks in calls, and I also, I always have to put a plug in for my advanced grief recovery specialist colleague, Darlene Garcia. We would do these community talks, and that was one of the things that we were seeing a lot was I could only have 10 people at this funeral. That has changed a lot now, but at the time, it was just like, what do you mean I can't have everybody there? What do you mean I can't serve food? I can't even feed, the mourners that come, to pay their respects. There's just so many things. I was talking to Senator Tony Atta about it because, he was in the business at the time before he got back into the legislature, still running their family business. And I would see it, just so profoundly how much it affected us when we're not able to grieve in the ways that we're used to, the ways that were passed down to us, through the generations, on how to care for each other,
Sure.
while we mourn.
Well, we do want to play a episode from episode 3 right now, Kate, which is right now available on the KUM Podcast Network. This is Kate Balthazar-Dodge's latest discussion of how you can deal with and overcome grief. Here's a sneak peek at episode 3.
We often talk about when we were doing our group grief talks in the community, we would talk about not just the myths of be strong, replace the loss, time heals all wounds. Those are kind of like the things that people say to you. And you might have said to people who are grieving, that again are misinformed, well-intentioned, right? Because people think they're making you feel better by saying don't feel bad and replace the loss somehow to try to get you to grieve faster, to hurry up with your grief, because it's uncomfortable for us, and also we don't like seeing you sad. And so grief knows no timeline. I don't know if I had touched on that, but we go through so many grief events in our lives, and we don't realize them until we're older, that we look back and we're like, oh, that was I don't know why this is touching a nerve with me now. And sometimes an event will happen and it will open up a whole other host of other feelings and memories of grief events that you had as a child. Or as a young adult even. And now you're sort of reliving this grief and you're wondering, gosh, that happened so long ago. Why am I feeling so badly about it now? Grief knows no timeline. That event is a part of you, and it's a part of your emotional history.
One with Grief, episode 3, now available on the KOM Podcast Network. We're also going to share the full episode later on this afternoon, so you can listen to it at lunchtime. Really, really good stuff from Kate. And Tomas, I'd say, I know you're doing a 5-part series, but if you ever want to make like a little bonus episode, I think with Miss Kate, you've got a perfect candidate with someone with a very, very deep knowledge in this kind of thing, and certainly the type of information that a lot of people can benefit from.
Yes,
I would be honored. I would be honored. Yeah.
Yeah, and as I learned, right, the healing process never ends. So, Kate, whenever you want to have that conversation, always open to it too.
Yeah.
Perfect, Tomas.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We're glad this little matchup worked out, and we're looking forward to your series, Tomas, your new episode, Kate, and anything you guys might work on together in the future. Thank you, guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris, Jay, Bree, and Tomas. Have a wonderful day.
You too, Kate.
And Tomas, make sure to let us know what they're feeding you over there. Huh?
I will tomorrow. Stay
Tomorrow,
tuned.
right? That's right. Yeah, take a lot of pictures, get receipts. Jay, where can they find the new episode of One with Grief and the other great content on the KUM Podcast Network?
You can go to our website at KUM.com and just go up at the top where it says listen, and then push